Hi everyone, and welcome to the fourth ever Evolved Exchange. My name is Sally Guest. I'm a high performance coach, author, and event planner from Evolved Living. Now, the Evolved Exchange is all about exchanging information, inspiration, and education with extraordinary people who have dedicated their lives to developing human potential. And I'm really excited today to introduce you to an extraordinary woman by the name of Gretchen Schoenstein. Now, Gretchen hails from Sonoma, California. She has recently moved there and she is known as a finish line moments expert. Now, who better to explain what that all means and to give you a little bit of background for her story than Gretchen herself. So, Gretchen, thank you so much for being here today. And yeah, just maybe share with the viewers your story or a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. And thank you, Sally. I'm so honored to be a part of this series and to be working with you. It's a real pleasure and treat for me. So thank you
All
for
right.
including me in this extraordinary
It's
series.
exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, well, I'll just dive right in. So, the Finish Line Moments expert, as I have been billed, comes from the fact that I have now crossed 43 finish lines, literal finish lines. I use that word carefully. So, I have run 43 half marathons
Wow.
over the last 5 years. And what's really fun about doing this interview right now is that in 6 days, I will be running my 44th half marathon.
Wow.
And in terms of being an expert, so to speak, around finish lines, is actually having run all 43 of those half marathons and gotten my own feet over every single starting line as well. I think one of the most critical things to remember about a finish line is that you had to start somewhere.
Mm.
And a lot of times, I know there's a quote, I believe it's by Coach Landry, who says, it's the start that stops most people. And so sometimes just the motivation of the first step over that starting line, and in this case, it could be figurative for some people as well, but just taking that first step can be the momentum that you need to get to that 40 or 44 finish line moment. So in terms of why I run half marathons,
Yeah, that was definitely my next question.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So about 9 years ago, my body attacked itself, or attacked me. So I had an autoimmune disease called sarcoidosis, and it presented very violently. And I couldn't walk for about 6 weeks, and I ended up in the hospital on a morphine drip for 8 days.
Wow.
And it was extraordinarily scary for my whole family, obviously, as well as for me. Um, and essentially, the simple gist of it is that my joints and my lungs blew up. And for a while, the doctors didn't know why. They did know that it was extremely painful. It's pain that I've never felt, and I hope I never feel again. And so, many months later of recovery and a lot of drugs and therapy and all that kind of stuff, the doctors and, different teams, different departments of doctors said, you're never going to run again. And I can't say that I was devastated, to be honest, because I wasn't much of a runner to begin with. So it just said to me, it's time to live a cautious, careful life. But I was really young at the time. And the way I put it is I entered into the agreement with them for about 4 years. I was like, okay, so every time something hurts, I get nervous that it's coming back. And I don't push myself and I don't push my body. And I just kind of succumb to the diagnosis and the prognosis. And I like to look at it as it was a fear-based life, really, that I was
Mm.
living. And then about 4 years after I had been sick, my life changed dramatically. And I won't go into details there, but everything got thrown into chaos, personally and professionally. And I was kind of spinning. And I thought, what gives me focus? What gives me, something to aim for that is going to give me guidance and structure? And especially in the midst of kind of feeling like I'm
Mm.
spinning out of control a little bit. And I didn't like that feeling. I wanted to get I've got a handle of this. It's not to me, it's for me. And so I decided to run a half marathon against doctor's orders. And I ran it, and it felt amazing. The training felt good, and every single step I took was a little bit of like, my body's actually capable of doing this. Oh my goodness! Well, if it can do this from here to that block, what else can it do? You know, that kind of thing. So, to long story short, I ran one half marathon, and it felt amazing. And in a week, I will be running number 44. So,
Wow.
yeah,
In 5 years.
5 years.
I
So,
mean,
yeah.
that in itself is just extraordinary. Um, I've only done a couple of half marathons, so
It's not only,
well, in comparison to 44, it kind of
right,
is.
right. Yeah, no, it's interesting because it's certainly not something the goal was never to run this many, you know, it was just to see what my body was capable of doing. And in the first year I ran 5 half marathons, which again, when I started doing that first one, you never could have made me believe that I could do 5 of them, let alone one. And then it just kind of evolved from there, um, because I got to really know my body and what I'm capable of. And I made a conscious decision to exit that agreement that I had made with the doctors, which is, here's your compressed, compartmentalized, fear-based life. And I
Mm,
said, no more. I'm not interested in
wow.
living that way anymore. So, and the more finish lines that I cross, the more, you know, even the experience has evolved. Because I'll be honest with you, when I first started, I did it to prove the doctors wrong.
Mm,
You know, I was like, you guys didn't get this right. I know you had the best intentions based on the experience that you have, but actually, I'm going to be okay. And then I did it to prove something to myself, and I did it to prove other people wrong. And now, all these finish lines later, it's really about the experience. It's about how much I learn between the starting line and the finish line. It's about that feeling that I get when I cross the finish line. How do I incorporate that feeling throughout the journey itself and not just make it about the finish line? I mean, I'm extraordinarily grateful for every single experience I have. I love the races that don't go well because then they make me appreciate the races that are extraordinary. So it's all part and parcel. It all goes together. They're all connected.
yeah, well, there's so many questions I have, and just so much I want to know about your story. Um, but I mean, as you know, at Evolved Living, we believe that human performance is comprised of 5 key areas. So, I mean, number one, obviously, and also with my coaching, is all about mindset and having a balanced and connected mindset. Number two is around the mind body connection and having optimal mind body connection. Number three is, mindful physical input. So, because what we put into your body, and I really love to talk to you about that, what we put into our body has a huge impact on our body's performance. And then, I mean, you are the expert of physical output, plenty of physical output to say the least. And then also mindful mind body restoration, because I mean, if you're running that many half marathons in 5 years, uh, restoration and recovery must be huge for you.
Crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe, I mean, let's start in the logical place, which is mindset. I mean, what does it take for you to get up and get out and train as much as you need to train and perform as much as you need to perform? I mean, what what really motivates you, and what is the key aspect in your mindset that allows you to do what you do?
Oh, that's such a great question. You know, I would go back to what I just said about it's about the experience now. It's a lot of it is curiosity. I stand at that starting line. I love that feeling. Like I get emotional every single starting line. I cry at every finish line because the experience itself really keeps me in the moment, and I
Mm,
crave that. I love that feeling of like I can't go wander off in my mind or body, obviously, because I'd get off track literally. Um, but anything's possible, anything can happen, and it's up to me as to how it unfolds, right? So, like, I could be perfectly prepared, train really well, feel like I tapered right, I ate right, you know, I ran enough mileage in between the last race and the next race, and all conditions being perfect, right? and I can get at that starting line and some sort of something can happen in that first mile. It can be like I had a race in Miami once where it had been hot, but there had been a breeze for a few days. The day of our race, the breeze stopped and it was 75 and it was hot air.
Wow.
And within the first half of the first mile, all of us were being affected by it. It would look like we were running in molasses and breathing in hot air. And it's like, okay, how do I adjust? I had a certain expectation for what this finish line was going to be, and what this experience was going to be. And it was like, okay, the way I described that race is the wheels fell off and I was very prepared for that race. And so what do you do in that moment? And in the moment, it's really about, okay, how do I take that next step? And then in review and hindsight, it's a fascinating experience to be like, I didn't just get off the course. I didn't quit. I didn't say, I don't want to do this. I can't handle it. And so being able to recognize that and then take another 10,000-foot view from that, I'm so curious about how that experience unfolded that I look at every single race like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what happens with this one.
Mm.
Where does it push me? Where do I get to be there for somebody else? One of the things that I've been able to do in the last, half dozen races is connect with people who are running their very first half marathon.
Wow,
And
cool.
that is like remarkably inspirational for me. And how often they say things like, "Oh, I'm only running the half," or I'm just running the half today," and yet it's their very first one. And so I kind of feel like, all right, being the finish line moment expert, like how do I help them understand how extraordinary it is that they're even taking this first step over their very first starting line? So I would say like the mindset for me is trusting that I've done the work,
Mhm.
making sure I've done the prep work ahead of time, both nutrition and what I put in as well as the training. So trusting the foundation, trusting the work, and the commitment, and then just being really curious. And for me, I actually say the Serenity Prayer before I start a race. And it's all about letting it go, like letting go of expectations, letting go of whatever came right up until that starting line, and
Mhm.
just saying, what I can control, I will, which is mindset, right? Because
Mhm.
if I just give up and don't let my mind, and not let my mind take over and say, you got this, you can do this, you can take that next step, and then just saying, the things I can't control, those are the things that I let go, and then just whatever happens, I get to have an amazing experience.
Absolutely. And you touched on something just before that I kind of want to pick up on because you're mentioning that a lot of people that you talk to are like, oh, I'm just doing my half, or it's just a half. And I'd love you to kind of expand on that because I know that you've got a little bit of an opinion around half marathons
Mhm.
and what it takes to actually get over that starting line and therefore the finish line.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and I think it goes back to what you were just asking about in terms of mindset, right? I mean, a lot of mindset has to do with language
Mm-hmm.
and how we speak to ourselves. And so, I am able to talk about it from this standpoint because I did it. I
Mm.
used to say all the time, it was almost this, I'm going to apologize before someone's even asked for me to apologize for the fact that I'm only running a half marathon, or, oh, I've had people say, oh, did you, it'll be a combination race. And they're like, oh, did you run the full or just the half today? And it always feels like a record scratching for me because it's like, wait a second, what do you mean just a half or only a half? And it goes both ways, right? It's the people around us that say it to us
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, as well as we say it ourselves. Like I would all the time. I would say to people, they'd be like, "Oh, most people say, oh, they'll make the kind-hearted mistake of, oh, she's run 43 marathons," and the old me would have said, "Oh, they're just half marathons or
Mm-hmm.
only halves." Now I'm like, no, no, let's be clear. Like it's a half marathon, let's just keep the identities separate. But then when I hear other people doing it to each other or doing it for themselves, that's where I'm like, okay, I got to step in. And because to me, so yes, from a fact-based standpoint, right, 13.1 miles, which is what a half marathon is technically half of 26.2, which is what a full marathon is. However, it's not half of anything. When I think about other races that everybody has a distance that works for them.
Mm.
And for me, it's the 13-mile distance pushes me
Mm-hmm.
to train hard. I can't just wake up tomorrow having never run before and run it and expect it to be a worthwhile or a fulfilling experience. Um, but it also, for me, it's the right distance that it pushes me hard
Mm-hmm.
because I can play with the hills or speed or how fast I want to go. But it's for me, 26 isn't my distance. Doesn't mean I'll never do it. And for other people, they love a 5K and they fly when they're
Mm.
doing a 5K. But here's the thing about a 5K. Technically, it's half of a 10K, but we don't call it a half 10K. We call it a 5K. It's its own identity. And so for me, half marathons, it's not a half anything. It's not a half
Mm.
effort. I'm not half resilient because I've come from where I've come from and I've run this many half marathons. I don't run over half of a finish line. And to your point about, when you introduced me, right, you called me finish line moment expert. Well, to that point, I was actually I was getting ready to do my 42nd half marathon. And I love going to the expo the day before because it always kind of gets me in the game, get my game face on for the race. And I was talking to one of the vendors and he said, "Oh, are you running the full or the half tomorrow?" And I remember thinking, oh, he asked the question correctly, right?
Yeah.
Because he didn't say just the half. He just, it was neutral, full or half. And I said, "Oh, I'm running the half tomorrow." And I said, actually, I'm running my 42nd half marathon. And
Which
he
is
said,
like, hello, wow,
right, right.
wow.
And he said, "Oh, that's like 21 fulls." And I stopped and I did like one of those long, slow blinks where your eyes close for, not just a millisecond. And then I engaged him and his colleagues in conversation about this very conversation about, this language that we use and self-deprecating what we're actually accomplishing. And 13 miles is a big deal. And he totally got it. And it was a lovely conversation. But then I was racing the next day and I thought about it and I thought, what's brilliant about the half marathons that I've done is I've actually crossed 43 finish lines.
Mm.
Therefore, I've had more experience with finish line moments. I've also had more experience getting that first step over the starting line, as opposed to, and not to take obviously anything away from marathons, but as opposed to crossing 21 marathon finish lines. I've
Mm.
crossed twice as many every single time I cross one. So I loved having that realization of like, that's why, like, that's what's so brilliant about choosing half as opposed to full, is because I now have twice as much experience with the finish line moments.
Absolutely. And as you were saying before, I mean, so many people in life, whether it is a half marathon or a full marathon or whatever it is, um, most people aren't even getting off the couch. They're not
Right.
even stepping over the start line, let alone having that finish line moment in their lives. So to be able to inspire people to get up and want that start line to actually, rather than waiting for the conditions to be perfect and having all the ducks in a row, to
Yeah.
actually get over that start line is just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. We talk about that a lot, but it really is. It's like, yes, you have to put the work in and there has to be some congruency between the training and the nutrition and getting out there.
Mm.
And so but at the same time, like there's plenty of times where I'm like, I just don't feel it or something cricks or aches or something like that. And I get out there anyway. And it's always worth it, even if it doesn't feel good in the moment, because
Mm.
I'm getting out there. I'm making the effort. I'm pushing my body. And yet I'm also aware of, okay, you know what? Today is a rest day.
Mm.
I have to rejuvenate without a doubt.
Mm.
But it's having that awareness
Yeah.
and that balance between today my body needs a rest and the next day going, I might be mentally tired, but I can push myself out there and get it done. And that's I crave that ability to understand that, and so that's why I keep doing it.
So self-awareness, is it fair to say, self-awareness and a strong mind-body connection would be absolutely imperative with what you do. So what is it that you do personally to optimize your mind-body connection?
It really, again, it goes back to curiosity. And the thing that I find that I used to take what was going on in my regular life and I would try to work it out while I was running or
Mhm.
training. Now it's I take the extraordinary realizations and ideas and inspirations from my running and try to bring it into my regular life.
Cool.
And so for me, things like, when I'm running, I really am in the moment. I didn't
Mm.
always used to be. But I've had people who aren't runners who are like, oh, running's terrible. You just think too much. And I'm like, oh God, no, not at all. Like my favorite thing to do, one of my favorite things to do, I have a lot of favorite things around running, but one of my favorite things to do is when I'm running in the summertime, like how many times do I smell someone's barbecue in their backyard? How many times can I smell new bark that someone just laid down in their yard? How many birds do I hear? How many, trees on, new buds on trees can I see in the springtime? Like there's so many things to be aware of in the moment that if I weren't in the moment, I would miss it. I would miss it every single time. And I love that. It's incredibly fulfilling. And then the other thing that it can sometimes do is I'm concentrating on something like being in the moment and observing what's going on around me, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I just ran another mile and I don't even really remember doing it,
Wow.
um,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
cool.
which is lovely. And the reality is, the way I look at it is, it's my responsibility to know my body.
Mm.
The mind body connection for me is it's a reciprocal relationship. When I'm
Mhm.
taking care of my body, my mind can relax a little bit and maybe some new creativity comes in. And when I'm taking care of my mind, which is, a lot of it is around self-care and self-compassion and self-kindness, then I also find that, my body and mind don't fight each other. They work congruently together. And even something as, I was sharing this with you earlier, I'm in a house right now that has very steep stairs.
Mhm.
And my knees have tweaked a little bit. They've kind of peaked in pain a couple of times as I've gone up the stairs. Now, if I weren't connected in the mind body, I would say, oh, something's wrong with my knees. And I would just let it go and just kind of give over the power of like, oh, I'm getting older, or I shouldn't be running, or, oh, maybe this race isn't going to go well in a week because my knee hurts. And instead, I had the awareness in the moment to go, okay, first of all, these are very steep stairs. So it is making me use my knee in a different way.
Mm.
Secondly, I'm not going to give over to the idea that, oh, something's wrong. Third, how can I engage right now to shift how this might feel? So, as a total curiosity experiment, I was like, I know my knee and my core technically are very far away. I also know that everything is connected.
Mm.
And so I just engaged my core, right? Because even as runners, like we have to engage our core constantly. It makes us better runners, but most of the time we don't do it. And
Yeah.
so I engaged my core, and it seems like such a simple thing, but it was so cool in the moment. The knee pain went away like that, like instantly. And I'd release my core and it would come back. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And
Mm.
how extraordinary to realize how much more control I have in this situation, and I can shift it in the moment. And so now, I'm here, I'm going up and down the stairs. The angle at which they are does engage something in my knee that goes, ah, that doesn't feel good. Every single time I engage my core, if somehow I'm not a physical therapist, but I'm guessing somehow there's something that lifts up and strengthens the knee when I'm engaging the core. And I love having experiences like that because it just makes me realize I have so much more control on the input and the output of how my body feels.
Mm. Absolutely. I mean, we obviously don't have time today to go into everything in terms of, like what you put into your body and, how you fuel your body for your races. So I guess we'll have to get you back. But that's really, really fascinating because I do think that the more we observe, the more awareness we have around our body and what fuels us, what supports us, then the better we can perform, right?
Absolutely.
So, what do you do? What's important to you in terms of restoring and recovering from a race, or, like keeping your tank full, so to speak?
Absolutely. I love what you write about well, about all of this and these five areas. And I don't push myself to the point of exhaustion. It's
Mm,
incredibly, because I'm running so many races and so many starting lines and finish lines. And to me, if I didn't take care of myself from a restorative standpoint, it would be burning the candle at both ends. And then somehow those experiences would be less than, because maybe there'd be more issues
mm,
and problems to overcome. And not that in every race there's something to deal with, but that's life, right? And I don't mean that
yeah.
in a negative way, but it's like there's always something to approach or to deal with. And so for me, the restorative way that I take care of myself is just as critical. It's a crucial component and ingredient in the recipe of these being great experiences, which is
Mm,
ultimately at the end of the day what I want, right? I'm not looking to get on the Olympic team. I'm not trying to set any world records. This is, there's a journey here that I want to help and motivate others. But for me, I know I get my rest. I get my 8 hours of sleep if I possibly can, 7 hours. I'll take a couple of naps a week. On the day before a race, like I know exactly, like the night before, I don't eat a lot of food because I know how my body processes and how long it takes to digest. I want to feel good before a race, so I'll make sure to, I always eat 3 hours before a race start,
mhm.
which, if it's a 6 a.m. race, that means I'm eating at
Oh,
3 a.m., whatever
yeah,
time zone I'm in. So then I have to work backwards. I have to do that work to work backwards. So when do I need to get a rest? When do I need to go to
absolutely.
bed? And even after the race, a lot of people, for some people it's a party time, and without a doubt, I love to celebrate, but I have to space it out. It's like, okay, so I'll have that glass of champagne at 5 p.m. instead of 10 a.m. because I have it at 10 a.m. shortly after the race when my body chemistry is still kind of, out of whack from that kind of output. I know it's going to make for a day that isn't enjoyable versus, you know what, today I need a rest after the race, and then I'll get a shower, and then I'll put good food in, and then I can go out and celebrate. And I would say in 43 races, I think I have napped after the race probably 40 times.
Yeah.
Almost always. And sometimes it's a half hour rest, and it's not a normal rest. It's not like a normal nap where you're like, oh, it's so restful. It's a little bit half awake and what have you, but I need to do that for my body.
Yeah.
And the other aspect of restorative is I do a lot of cross training. I don't
Mm,
only run, whether
yeah.
it's yoga or stretching or core work. And to me, that's actually part of the restorative part because I'm taking care of the whole instead of just the quads or just the
Yeah.
the glutes. So your restorative, I think, is just it's
Just as
you'll
important.
fry. It is an equal component, absolutely. And if you ignore that, I think what happens in the other components is that it's almost like a house of cards,
Mm,
just waiting. Like it's fragile. That foundation is more fragile without the restorative.
absolutely. Unfortunately, we are pretty much out of time today. But thank you so much, Gretchen, for taking time to have a chat. And I mean, clearly we've got so much more to discuss. But just to finish up, can you tell people where they can find you?
Mhm.
And secondly, I'm really curious to know, are you ever going to stop? Like, do you have a certain number of races that you're going to run, or like you're just going to keep going and going until you can't anymore?
Right. Yeah. So the first part first. So I am writing a book called Finish Line Moments,
Hmm.
and
Of
that'll be
course.
coming out this year, right? Of course. A lot of great stories, not just mine. And then, so I have a blog that I've been writing for years about all of this running called iwonderwoman.com. And then my email is gretchen.gls at
Hmm.
gmail.com. And I am training to become a running coach as well. So I
Fabulous.
help
Awesome.
people with everything from specifically around their running to also being a finish line moment expert. I work with people who are in life transition. So I specialize that in and out of jobs, in and out of new cities, or in and out of relationships. So kind of helping people understand that it isn't just about the finish line, it's about
Absolutely.
the journey in between. So and as far as, so I'd love to hear from the folks who support you. And as far as where I stop, uh, well, I am running number 50 this year. So I will be running 7 half marathons this year, and the goal is to get to number 50 in October.
Wow.
So yeah, 50 half marathons. I'm really excited about that. That feels really, it's a powerful
Mm.
number. And no, I won't stop after that. I don't know what the next goal is after that. I don't know if it's, running them faster, running them all, every week. I mean, I know a lot of people have different journeys of 50 in 50 states or 50 in 50 weeks or something like that. That's not how I approach it, because I really, maybe after that, maybe I'll run a 26-mile race. Maybe I'll get into really partnering with people running their first one and just run the whole race with them and see what that unfolds as. So, but right now the main focus is getting to number 50 and having it be a really awesome, cool experience, whatever it ends up
Whatever
being.
it is.
Yeah.
And I have zero doubt that you'll get there and you'll get there in absolute style. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much, Gretchen. And I look forward to reconnecting with you again, hopefully this year as you near
Yes,
your 50th race.
absolutely.
But in the meantime, yeah, if you want to get in touch with Gretchen, you can see her information on the screen. And thanks so much.